Welcome to RAMI. My name is Paul Bogdans, and I'm going to cover some techniques on how to troubleshoot the RAMI multiband antenna system for Freightliner trucks. The items that will be covered are the antennas, grounding, antenna cable and bracket assemblies, the multiplexer box, and then we'll also go over a couple advanced troubleshooting techniques. One of the most common problems found, and also the easiest to troubleshoot, is a damaged antenna. And this is due to being out in the elements. Most times, the wire breaks where it is soldered to the ferrule at the bottom of the antenna. Another common problem found, and this is for any CB antenna system, is poor grounding. And this is usually due to corrosion. The type of antennas used on these trucks require a ground plane to provide the other half of the antenna. So the trucks are being used to provide half of the antenna system. So this makes placement and grounding a major issue. So now we got to remember, ground straps are not the same as a ground plane. While a ground strap can provide a good DC path to ground and help choke off currents to help make things stable, it does not provide the reflection of the antenna that is required. It has been proven over time that the multiplexer box is the least likely cause for any performance issue. So I'm going to show you a way how to troubleshoot the multiplexer box that will save you time and effort. This and additional information, including a tutorial on the basic understanding of antennas, can be found at our website, www.rami.com. We're going to start with the antennas first, and we're going to remove them using a 1/2 inch and 9/16 inch wrench. Now we're going to go inside, and I'll show you how to troubleshoot the antennas. The most common problem found is a damaged antenna. And the place where it's usually damaged is where the wire is soldered to the ferrule portion at the bottom of the antenna. So to check continuity of this, we're going to remove the cap and then cut a couple little slots at the tip of the heat shrink. We'll carefully peel this back. We want to be careful not to pull the wire out of the slot and let the top portion unspring, because this would change the electrical length for the CB frequencies. Now we're going to, because there's a protective coating on the wire, we got to either sand or lightly scrape off that coating to expose the bare wire. Now it helps if you use some type of alligator clip to connect to this point. And we're going to check for DC continuity from the tip down to the ferrule end of the antenna. And then while we're doing this, we're going to also want to twist and flex that bottom portion to make sure we don't have an intermittent break. Now we're going to check for good grounding from the mirror brackets to chassis ground. But before we do that, we're going to go inside the cab and disconnect all the radio cables that run from the multiplexer box. And then we're going to come back out here, remove the back cover of the mirror, and then we're going to disconnect the antenna cable assembly right at the bracket mount. Okay, now we're going to come inside, disconnect the CB cable, and then we'll get the AM/FM cable. Just like that. And then if you have the cell phone option, we want to disconnect that as well. Now we'll head back outside. All right, now we're going to take the back cover off. Now, on most models, you might see these little ground plane elements, and these are for the cell phone frequencies if you're using the cell phone option. So at this point right here, while we're here, we're going to do a quick continuity test from the standoff nut to the outer shell ground portion of the cable assembly, and we want no DC continuity. If we had DC continuity there, we'd already know we have a problem. So now we're going to disconnect the cable assembly from the bracket mount. that. And now, before we move on, when we reassemble this later, we're going to want to make sure the ground portion, the outer shell of this connector on the cable assembly, has good DC continuity on the bracket mount when we put it back together, because you can get corrosion in there and not have a good connection. So now we're ready to test for grounds. I'm going to go put one lead on good chassis ground. And then the other test lead is going to go to the bracket mount itself. And we're looking for DC continuity of less than 5 ohms. If we get a reading of more than 5 ohms, we're going to want to look for corrosion or loose connection from the bracket mount, the whole assembly, all the way down to chassis ground. Now, if after checking both the driver and passenger sides, everything checks out good, the next step is to go inside the cab and troubleshoot the multiplexer box and the cable assemblies that come all the way out to the mirrors. Okay, now we're going to check the multiplexer box and the antenna cable assembly that runs from the multiplexer box all the way out to the mirrors on both sides. Now, we left the multiplexer box for last because, as we stated earlier, it's been proven to be the least likely cause of any performance issue. Now, testing through the CB cable is no longer possible because internal components do not provide a DC path. So now we're going to make all our checks from the AM/FM cable, and by being able to test this out from only accessing the AM/FM cable, it's going to save you a lot of time and effort of actually getting to the multiplexer box in the cables underneath the dash. So to do this test, we're going to first connect one test lead to the center conductor of the antenna cable assembly out at the mirror. And then our other test lead is going to go to the center conductor of the AM/FM cable. We want DC continuity. Then the next check, we're going to leave the center conductor connected out at the mirror, and we're going to go to the outer shell ground portion of the AM/FM cable, and we want no DC continuity. Then the last check, we're going to go from the outer shell ground portion of the antenna cable assembly to the outer shell of the AM/FM cable, and we want DC continuity. If a problem is found after checking both the driver and passenger sides, the first thing we're going to want to look at is the antenna cable assemblies that run from the multiplexer box out to the mirrors. And we're going to want to look for damage to where the cable may have been pinched or crushed along the routing. And then also on both sides of the truck, there's 2 cable breaks. One's down at the kick panel and one's at the lower mirror arm. We're going to want to make sure that those connectors are fastened securely. Now, if the cables check out good, then further evaluation of the multiplexer box would be required. Now we're going to go outside, and I'm going to show you a couple advanced troubleshooting techniques. This first technique, we're going to verify that we have a good connection through the upper mirror arm to chassis ground. Now, before we do this test, we're going to want to make sure that we have the antenna cable assembly disconnected from the bracket mount. Now, on most models, we have a good connection through the upper and lower mirror arms, but we found it to be critical to have the connection at the top. If we only have it at the lower mirror arm, it'll change the ground path, and it affects the radiation patterns for CB frequencies, which could greatly affect your performance. So now to do this test, we're going to remove the cover, remove the bolts that hold the lower mirror arm to the door, disconnect the cable brake and the wiring. Now we're ready to do the test. We're going to put a test lead on chassis ground and the other test lead on the lower mirror arm on the ground portion as we carefully pull it away. And we're looking for DC continuity of less than 5 ohms. If we get a reading of more than 5 ohms, then we're going to want to troubleshoot looking for corrosion or loose connections from the lower mirror arm through the upper down to chassis ground. This next technique is going to require an SWR meter. We're going to check for damaged cable that a DC continuity test was unable to pick up. But it could have been damaged to the point where it changed the impedance of the cable, which could definitely affect your CB performance. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to access the cable breakdown at the kick panel, and we're going to check the cable that runs all the way up to the antenna. Okay, once you remove a few panels here so you can access the cable break, we're going to disconnect that, and we're going to want to make sure we get the cable that's running out to the antenna. Connect that to our SWR meter. And we're looking for a reading around 2 to 1 or better, right around 27 megahertz. And this is going to vary a little bit because we're looking at each side individually. Now, if you get a reading much worse than 2 to 1, and the resonant dip shifted in either direction by several megahertz, that's a pretty good indication you got a problem with that side of the truck. On the Sterling trucks, the doors are non-metal. To ground the mirror brackets to the truck, a long ground strap is used to run down into the cab into the frame. Now this has created some grounding issues, and it looks like the mirror bracket is like a floating ground. Anything that we touch, the brackets, the cables, if you're sitting inside the cab, everything's hot. It'll affect the readings and performance of your system. So here at RAMI, we've developed a simple field fix that will greatly stabilize this system and greatly improve your CB SWR and gain performance. The RAMI field fix consists of using a metal coupling bracket. On the inner part of the door frame, right in this area, is a metal bracket. What we're going to want to do is drill a hole through the top, and we're going to attach this coupling bracket with a metal fastener to that inner metal plate, and that'll give us DC continuity from the coupling bracket out to the mirror brackets. Then we will form the coupling bracket along the curve of the door frame and fasten the bottom portion with a non-metal fastener. This is going to create a coupling effect between the door and mirror portion in the roof of the cab. It'll create a more, let's say, solid ground plane for the CB frequencies. This field fix is essential in creating a proper ground plane for your CB frequencies. And it also can eliminate any issues that you may be having with AM/FM, weather band, or cell phone performance. Again, detailed installation instructions can be found in the Sterling Service Bulletin.